keep on plowing on through with the linebacker position. Last week, we talked about Sion Takitaki, who was on bye, and then, or 2 weeks ago, talked about him. He was on bye. He came back, 10 tackles in a TFL. He's running right alongside Deion Jones. We'll see how they work when JOK comes back. We talked about Blake Martinez last year, who abruptly retired the next day. We're going to be talking about that Raider situation shortly. We're talking about Jalen Smith, who got 41 snaps. He had 5 tackles, a QB hit, a fumble recovery. Decent day. He got the work, at least. And Tay Crowder has been totally phased out of this system. He only played three or four snaps this past week. So it should be Jayon Brown and Micah McFadden the rest of the way. We mentioned Azeez Al-Shaair, who wasn't really going to play much in his first game back, so maybe it's more of a stash going forward. He got a lot more run because Dre Greenlaw was ejected halfway through the game. He got 3 tackles on 31 snaps. Pretty minimum usage, and not sure how much he'll factor until Dre Greenlaw unless Greenlaw misses time. We're talking about Derek Barnes.
Shaair might be one that we just kind of have to wait and see on. I asked Leo on Twitter kind of what he thought about Al-Shaair coming back. And he thinks he's going to kind of take a backseat so long as Greenlaw is healthy and they're playing most of the snaps. That doesn't mean that he won't get any time in there and get to play because he's been very efficient with how he's been or with playing in the past. But again, just kind of referring back to last week, it might be worth a stash in case he does see an uptick in snaps. So sorry to interrupt. Go ahead and continue.
No. Of course. No, it's important because we know what he can do. And what we talked about a couple weeks ago is, we talked about him having a 100 tackle season. He's done this before. Mm-hmm. We were very familiar with him. So another name we brought up was Derek Barnes, the Detroit linebacker. He only got 2 tackles and 42 snaps. Really disappointing, especially with Malcolm Rodriguez out. So hopefully he gets back on track going forward. But just disappointing day for Derek Barnes and a day where the Bears did whatever they wanted against them. We brought up Caden Ellis, who I mentioned before, as that Pete Werner replacement. We were deciding between him and Zach Bond. On the show last week, we said Caden Ellis. He hit. He had 7 tackles, a sack, a TFL, QB hit, if you award that, plus a forced fumble. Good day all around. As long as Pete Werner is out, Caden Ellis should be in. So let's get into the pickups for this week. I mentioned at the top of the linebacker segment the Raiders situation. And just a quick rundown. 2 weeks ago, Devon Diablo got hurt a couple snaps into this game. He was left the game with a forearm injury, was placed on the injured reserve last week. They have Denzel Perriman, who is a normal starter for them, but he got hurt midweek last week and missed the game. Blake Martinez was the starter last week and then came into practice and was like, wow, I was so bad, I'm going to retire, and abruptly retired on Thursday of last week. So this is a very bare bones Raiders linebacker group. We are down to a Diablo on the IR. We are down to Denzel Perriman, who missed this past week with injury, and Luke Masterson and Jayon Brown, both of which had good weeks, especially Luke Masterson, who missed some time with an injury in that mid-game and returned and continued to play on through. I am interested in both as long as Perriman is out. I have no idea the severity of Perriman's injury. It's been completely kept under wraps, and that makes it difficult. But in the meantime, I'm still interested in Jayon Brown as a near must pickup. He played every single snap. He was clearly ahead of Luke Masterson in this past game. Diablo is still out until week 14 regardless. They face Denver, Seattle, and the Chargers. Denver's a meh matchup. Seattle's a good matchup. The Chargers are a great matchup. All those games, Diablo is guaranteed to be out. Jayon Brown had 8 tackles, fumble recovery on 65 snaps. I'm willing to pick him up everywhere if you didn't get him last week.
Absolutely. Yeah, it kind of seems like Jayon Brown's really going to take charge here over Luke Masterson. And whenever Diablo does come back, I would imagine Masterson probably takes a bigger hit. On to our next guy. You put up Monty Rice, linebacker for Tennessee Titans. He outsnapped Dylan Cole this week, I assume. It's a Zach Cunningham injury, right? That's causing.
Yeah, Cunningham was placed on the injury reserve. I don't know if he's going to come back this year. At the very least, he's going to be out for a few more weeks.
Right, and honestly, as far as fantasy goes, losing Cunningham, God forbid, we don't want anybody to be injured. But as far as fantasy production goes for this Tennessee defense, I think you're probably looking a little bit better with Monty Rice rather than even a Zach Cunningham or Dylan Cole. So up next week, he's got Green Bay, who's kind of been up and down. They had a pretty successful week this last week, but it's definitely an advantageous matchup for a linebacker coming in to fill in to make an impact. Come in and make some plays.
Yeah, it's gonna be difficult to. I put it down here, and I don't feel good put it down here, but because him and Dylan Cole has been playing ahead of him the last few weeks, and all of a sudden that switch flipped this past time. And obviously the Titans defense played very well this past week in very difficult situations where they were missing a lot of people, even more than they used to. No Jeffrey Simmons this past week, no Amani Hooker, no Caleb Farley got hurt. They were losing a lot of people. So I was impressed by Monty Rice. I think that the coaching staff showed some faith in him. And listen, whether it'll come or not, I do think he's worth chasing this late in the season if you are searching for those linebackers. And on that subject, Tyrell Dodson of the Buffalo Bills is the next name I want to be bringing up. Tremaine Edmonds, unfortunately, left the game with a groin injury. He was limited all week with a groin injury heading into it, so it could be a re-aggravation that could lead to a longer-term absence. We don't have more information at this time, but it is something that we do want to be tracking because that Bills linebacker is a very valuable role. So in the past, we saw Terrell Bernard fill that. This past week, Bernard didn't play in terms of he was kept on the sideline for Tyrell Dodson. And it really comes down to a matchup-proof type of thing. If Tyrell Dodson is going to be getting every single snap that Tremaine Edmonds is not, I'm picking him up and playing him. It's plain and simple. Tyrell Dodson is almost a must-play. And he's available in every single league because he's a backup right now. So that's a name that you should definitely be chasing on your wires this week. At the very least, a 1 week play should Tremaine Edmonds miss. Obviously, if Edmonds plays, you can't play Dodson. But with any re-aggravation injury, I expect it to be at least a 1 week minimum on the sideline.
Yep. This, like you said, this Buffalo defense is pretty high powered, and you really like to go after their replacements over any other over middling defenses and things like that, just lending better to tons of opportunity. So definitely worth a pickup in this defense that's going to see a lot of action. So.